Okay. All right. So,
Thank you guys for being here, by the way.
yep. Welcome everyone to EarthSpace. We're going to get started here in just a moment. So please, thank you for your patience. Okay. All right. So welcome everyone to EarthSpace 2026. I'm Leah Cheli-Doolittle, the Executive Director of the Earthlight Foundation, and we're so glad that you're joining us this Earth Day for a conversation on Earth, space, and planetary stewardship. At its core, this event invites us to explore how space innovation can nurture Earth's environment, deepen our sense of connection between this planet and the cosmos, and help us imagine a future in which Earth and space are not competing domains, but interdependent realms working in harmony for the sustainability of life. Today's program brings together a remarkable group of speakers with different but deeply connected perspectives. Right, we have our group here on the screen. We'll hear from Frank White, whose work on the overview effect helped define one of the most powerful ideas in space culture, that seeing Earth from space can fundamentally transform the way we understand our planet and ourselves. We'll hear from Dr. Gülin Dede, whose work spans Earth observation, climate resilience, technology strategy, international governance, and science policy, just to name a few. We'll hear from Jeff Overbeek, the technical director of the Planetary Sunshade Institute, who will speak about the evolution of one of the boldest space for Earth concepts in today's climate conversation. And we are also joined by Rick Tumlinson, our founder, for a broader discussion of the bigger picture, purpose, stewardship, and the relationship between humanity's future on Earth and beyond it. So to open us up, I'd like to turn it over to Rick.
Oh, okay. Well, and we have Robert Katz sitting there nodding and smiling. So Robert is going to act as the herder, the cat's herder, I guess we'll call it. Well, welcome humans. And I'm going to do a share. So I'm the first one who gets to stumble around with sharing my screen. And I think, let's see what we can do here. You can see that?
Sure can.
And let's see if we can go full screen with that baby. Well, oh, of course. There we are. Are you able to see it now?
Yes.
Perfect. I have a hidden theory, or a strong theory, actually, that when we master the art of AV for an entire year, that's when the Vulcans show up and join us, invite us to join the Federation. So I'm representing Earthlight Foundation. I'm going to be talking about the purpose of the organization overall, but I'm going to start with a little bit of a couple of commercials. First of all is our event, and I'm hoping everybody on screen will be able to be there. And we've had the New Worlds Conference for many years. This year we're scaling, we're going bigger. We're creating a bigger tent or dome or habitat, if you will. We're going to be in Houston at the George Brown Convention Center in the middle of town. We're working with our friends from the Transnational Space Alliance Summit. And it's just going to be the beginning of our scaling. And if you're interested in attending, let us know. If you're interested in volunteering to help us, let us know. We would love to hear about it and bring you on board. But again, we're inviting everybody, and any group. If you have a group and you want your group to come, we'll give you a room. We want everybody there. Of course, the capstone of the event is the legendary Space Cowboy Ball, and we've had an amazing amount of incredible guests, including Jeff Bezos, many other folks. It asked the question, what would you wear to a party on Mars in 100 years? And we get all kinds of interesting answers, as you can see. So we'd love to have you on board. The other project we're doing right now is Space for Ukraine. And again, anybody wants to volunteer, anybody who wants to donate, just let us know. That's info@earthlightfoundation.org, info@earthlightfoundation.org. In this particular case, we're working with an incredible lady who carried telescopes into Ukraine a few years ago and is working with educators who are already on the ground. And our goal is to raise some funds and see if we can have these kids understand that there is a day after. So, getting into this, this is what this event is all about. This lady right here, the mother, our mother world. It's not about billionaires building spaceships. It's not about national programs. It's not about um, all of these sorts of things we hear about all the time. It's about her. Everything we do about going out there is about her. And I frankly love her. The variety of life, the incredible panoply of different organisms that make up this world are stunning and grand and just completely amazing. I love this shot. I live to do this myself. I would love to have this happen. But we're all tied together, all of us. We are the stewards. I don't care what religious faith you come from, what your background is in terms of faith. There are passages in all of the great books of faith that speak of us being the stewards as in protectors of this amazing sphere we call the mother world. And from the largest to one of the smallest, it's us. It's who we are. We haven't done a great job of it so far. And that's part of what this day, in its broadest sense of Earth Day, celebrates. And there are people all over the world right now talking about Earth and Earth Day and what we can do to be better. Because again, it's us. As we mature, as we move from being apes to apes with guns to apes who maybe have experienced the overview effect and look back at this amazing world, and apes with hope. We are the dream. I use this picture. This is my daughter. She gets a little embarrassed now. She's 13 years old. But I've been using this for many years because it's one of the most beautiful and amazing pictures I've ever taken. Why? Because that is the very first time in her life as a human being that she had ever touched a living plant. And that is stunning to me. And if we can be in that moment, if we can find ourselves as a species inhabiting that place, that world, that place of becoming and being, then we have hope. We have to be able to dream. And we haven't dreamed very much in our history, or in recent history as a species. There are individuals who have dreams. They're on this call. They're around the world. They're responsible for many of the technologies that you're using today, many of the things that you have in your life. These are dreamers who thought outside of the cage. But as a society, that is not the way we operate. We've been locked in. We've kept ourselves shut down, especially when it's something as hard as leaving the planar world on which we are evolved as apes, running across the plains, into looking up into another dimension and rising out of this and becoming what we can be out there. That is possibly the greatest leap of all. We have to break out of that. We have to be able to imagine ourselves as more than, rather than just then. We can break out of the cage, we can escape, we can expand, but we are not running away. We are here with a purpose. And Earthlight asks that purpose. What is it? For us, we've come up with a series of principles that we believe help us understand who we are. We call them the principles of purpose. They help maybe give us a little bit of meaning. And to us, the idea is that if we had a society that operated from the principles I'm about to discuss, it'd be an incredible civilization to be a part of. Because you do have a purpose. We all have a purpose. And so Earthlighters, and by the way, you don't have to buy our newsletter. You don't have to send us money to be an Earthlighter. You just have to examine, understand, and maybe take these principles in and be able to operate from them. We're not looking for that. We're not looking for subscribers. We'll take you. We will love your donations. We just want you to think different. And so we have our three principles. The first one is to protect and expand the domain of life, to protect the mother world, what this day is about, what this event is about, to protect her. We've done a terrible job. We've taken from her, we've pillaged her, we've expanded our civilization at the cost of her health. And it's time to change that, because now we know. We may not have known as recently as 100 years. We may not, 100 years ago, we may not have understood exactly what we were doing, what we were about. We were coming from a different place, a different psychology, if you will. But now we do. Now we understand. We can see the entire history, even back into the birth of the universe itself. We can see the history of our cultures. We can see who we are. And we can look forward. And thus we expand the domain of life. And this is where we go a little beyond just protecting the mother world, because we believe it is our mission not only to protect life, but to expand life into the universe. And I think that's grand. I think that is an idea that could propel an entire civilization. The seeds of life, butterflies on Mars, trees on the moon. The second principle is to honor and evolve human civilization. I honor you, no matter who you are, where you came from, what your path of evolution was, what the color of your skin is, what your beliefs are, what your gender is. I don't care. I honor you. I honor your path. I honor your being in this place with me, because we are together. And this is one of those concepts that really does get into the whole space idea of us being in one spaceship together. When I look at things that happened in the years past, be it Black Lives Matter here in America, or Me Too, when it comes to the genders, that's just different people showing up. That's just different people saying, I have a different perspective. We can take all of those perspectives now, put them all together, and have a full multidimensional view of who it is that we are and where we came from. And there, using that, building from that, growing from that into what we can become, we can evolve ourselves as a species into the universe. And that's the second clause, to evolve human civilization. We can learn to work together, to live together, to share, to grow together. There's one place in the solar system, for example, where Americans and Russians aren't fighting each other, and it's right up there. And as they look down, they see the Earth, and as Frank will talk about, they share that experience of the overview effect. This is what we do. This is our possibility. This is our challenge. And as we do these things, then the third principle, which I consider the fun one, to explore and experience everything in the universe, because without us, without sensing beings, the universe doesn't exist. It's dead. There's nothing there. Unless there's someone to talk about it, someone to feel it, someone to be a part of it, someone to be affected by it, for all intents and purposes, it does not exist. It is just energy and mass forever and ever and on. And so we believe it is our job, literally our job as a species, having strengthened ourselves with those first two principles to then enact and act upon the third. And what's beautiful about it is that this time we can do it differently. We go together. We can go as one family, no matter what that family looks like. Maybe that family is AIs and humans, or SIs and humans, and all the different spectra in between, all the different combinations of what it takes for a conscious being to arise. We go together, all of us. And this time we'll take it from nobody. Wherever we find life, we go around it. Wherever there is no life, we bring it. And this time we give it to everybody. This isn't about us. There's an old tribal saying here that and I'm paraphrasing, but that we don't own this world, that we don't own this earth. It's just been loaned to us. It belongs to our children and our children's children, and all the children forever and ever and on into the future. If we can adopt this way of thinking, if we can adopt this way of being with each other, then we can reach across the wall that we have built for ourselves. We can break out of the cage that we have surrounded ourselves with, and we can become who we are meant to be. And someday soon, the children of Earth will be able to look back to experience this amazing planet, just as the astronauts in Artemis did. In this picture, which is a clip, part of a clip, I think it was astronaut Reed took, they're watching the Earth go down beyond the horizon of the moon. It is Earth set. But you know what? What's amazing about all of this? It always rises again. And no matter how dark our periods of time that we are in, no matter how badly we treat each other, no matter how wrong we can be to each other, no matter how much we fall back into being those apes, except now we are apes with guns and cannons and bombs, we can come together. And that beautiful, beautiful orb that you see in front of you, the mother world of Earth, can rise again. We are engaged in a revolution. We can make it happen. There's a universe out there that wants us, calls to us, sings to us, and gives us hope. There's a universe out there that needs life. And if we can protect it down here and we can grow it down here, then we can take it out there. And that's a mission, not just for a lifetime, not just for the length of a civilization, but for all time. And thus we have the credo of Earthlight: to carry the light of life to places now dark, to carry the seeds of life to places now dead, and the eyes, hands, and minds of humanity to places unseen, untouched, and unexplored. Join us if you will. I look forward to hearing the rest of the speakers. Robert, over to you, sir.
Wow, amazing. Thank you so much, Rick, for your insights. We're so grateful. We're so grateful for you creating the Earthlight Foundation. We're so grateful for all the amazing speakers that we have here today. And we're so grateful, of course, for our amazing Earthlings that are joining us on Spaceship Earth here to experience Earth Day with us together. What an amazing, incredible time to be alive. Like, it's almost hard to believe that that Earth Day was scheduled right after so many amazing events, most significantly coming back from circling the moon and beginning our new journey to explore beyond spaceship Earth and explore other places for our civilization to thrive, continue to thrive as a way of preserving our Earth. And it's when you think of we've been around for billions and billions and billions of years, and we're just finally now in the time of which we're all living, being able to experience this unprecedented expansion. And after these billions of years, it's no accident that it's happening now. It's happening now because of the convergence of organizations like Earthlight and the brilliant minds like we have here on our panel and all of you here in the audience. This convergence of collaboration, cooperation, and communication that's unlocking and unleashing the potential that we always had to explore and expand the domain of life is finally now happening. So let's hear how that is happening. Let's hear why. Let's hear about the inspiration. Let's talk to our amazing panelists. And we're going to kick off today with somebody that has really been an inspiration for many of us and has been one of the people that has been saying, don't look down at our phones, but instead look up and look up at the beauty of Earth, the beauty of the cosmos, the beauty of the space, which he always reminds us we don't have to go into space because Earth is already in space. So we're already living in space. And he's going to tell us exactly what that means and how that's going to be an inspiration. But most importantly, it's such an example of the power of the people, not rocket scientists necessarily or engineers, but people of coming into the community, bringing together their own talents and their own contributions in ways that we can barely even imagine. So for that, I would like to introduce a great member of the community, great member of Earthlight, a great friend of Earthlight, a great friend of Earth, and a great philosopher of space, the amazing Frank White. Sir?
Well, thank you, Robert. Gosh, I could give the shortest talk in the history of webinars right now. I'm just really moved by what Rick said. I could just say I agree with everything and pass it on to Gülin or Jeff. Just that simple. Rick and I have known each other for many, many years. I would say we really are saying very similar things in different ways, but that's okay. And I think you'll see why as I give my talk. People have different ways of hearing things, different ways of listening. The message is becoming really clear, and Robert is right. This is a key inflection point in the life of our species and of our mother world. We need to get it right. So we got to get the message out. So let's start with the first slide. All right. Thank you, Leah. So I was honored to be at the first Earth Space Day, and this is Earth Space Day for a reason, in 2024. I'm going to use some of the same slides because I want to hearken back to that moment, and that was a moment created by Earthlight. And my topic is Apollo 8 and Artemis 2, Earth Day and Earth Space Day. There's a remarkable and almost mystical similarity between these two missions. I'm still unpacking it, to be honest with you. Let's look at the next slide. If you were here in 2024, you saw this slide. And I talked about the 1960s, and I talked about how it was the best of times and the worst of times, to quote Charles Dickens in A Tale of Two Cities. What an incredible time to be alive. And I've done a calculation. Actually, only 17% of the people alive on Earth today were alive in 1968 when Apollo 8 went to the moon. And that's alive, not old enough to appreciate Apollo 8. But the 1960s was a time of great change, an explosion of thought. John F. Kennedy was bringing Camelot to us, and we called it Camelot. People were on quests. Everyone was trying new things. And yes, for the first time, Americans were opposing their government when the government was at war. And this was a demonstration in Grosvenor Square. You can't see it, but if you looked far enough back, away from the crowd, you'd see the American embassy. And there were a lot of people there protesting the Vietnam War. And I'm very far in the back. If you look at that tree in the middle, I'm even further back than that with a friend of mine. And it was a typical demo, as we called it in those days. But it was a peaceful demonstration until some anarchists decided that they would throw marbles at the horses. You can see a few horses there with bobbies riding them. And the cops decided, well, if you're going to do that, I think it'd be a good idea to charge the crowd. So if you look at that crowd, you can imagine the chaos that ensued. My friend and I ran away. We weren't very brave. We didn't fight. And there's a low fence surrounding that area. And I literally threw my friend over the fence and I jumped behind her. And as we walked away, we had the opportunity to say hi to Mick Jagger. A lot of celebrities were involved in these protests in the 60s. I later found out there was another demo there, and Sir Richard Branson told me I was there. So he said, you know, Frank, we're both children of the 60s, and we are. Next slide. So on the surface, conflict, war, assassination. We had two people assassinated, Robert F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King Jr. The war in Vietnam was a quagmire. Nobody knew what to do. Lyndon Johnson was trying to figure out how to get out. He actually he declined to run again because of it. But it was a time of hopelessness and helplessness. And then NASA just did something remarkable. Thomas Paine, who was the director of NASA, decided we're going to go to the moon. We're not going to land, but we're going to go. And that was a surprise. And one of the great things about Apollo 8, it didn't get a lot of hype because it was really supposed to be an incremental, maybe orbital mission. And then apparently, one of the stories is that we heard the Soviet Union was going to do something remarkable, and we decided, well, we better do something remarkable. Next slide. So, terrible things happening on Earth, wonderful things happening in outer space. Does it sound familiar to you? I bet it does. So, a lot happened with Apollo 8, but of course, what we remember, the image behind me, the image on the slide, Earthrise. It was a surprise. There's a beautiful little clip of the astronauts discovering Earth rising above the horizon. Frank Borman, the commander, says, "Hey, don't take that picture. It's not on the schedule." Nobody knows to this day if he was joking. But in any event, the picture was taken. It is one of the most iconic pictures of all time, even today. And it showed us who we are and where we are. Every living thing that was alive that day is in that picture. I am in that picture somewhere, you know? Some of you are in that picture. The only people not in that picture were the astronauts. And it began to give us an understanding of how space exploration could change our awareness, could change our identity, could change our consciousness. And we didn't have a term for it then. We talked about riders on the Earth and we talked about Earthrise. We didn't have the term the overview effect until many years later, 1987. And we'll talk about that. So let's go to the next slide. It is no accident, it's been documented. The first Earth Day took place in 1970. And it was definitely a result, really, it was all of the Apollo missions contributed, but I think 8 was really the one. And you see this picture, and this little girl is holding an Earth. I don't know if it's accurate, but it's more accurate than some of the imagery that we see, where we have little dotted lines that show us the borders of the planet. And that's one thing, that is all about the overview effect: no borders, no boundaries, just the whole system. And there it is again. First Earth Day, 1970, and we've been doing Earth Day ever since. Next slide. And then just to reinforce it, after Earth Day, 1972, Apollo 17, the blue marble picture, truly a beautiful picture. I don't know which is more iconic, if that's a reasonable comparison, but they're both really remarkable pictures that came out of Apollo. And it's remarkable what happened between 1968 and 1972. 4 years of incredible creative missions. Nobody today, I think, would doubt that the environmental movement got a huge boost out of this program. And of course, if you take a close look at this picture here, you can probably see the Strait of Hormuz, and you can probably see some areas of conflict. And yet, from a distance, you see serenity and beauty, as Rick talked about. Next slide.
Did it give you a sense of purpose? Not just
Can you stop it just for a minute?
us?
Hold on. Yeah. So the overview effect, just to define it, most of you probably know what it is. I coined the term in the 80s. My book came out in 1987, and it was not about astronauts. It was about future space dwellers who would always see the Earth in the sky. I thought they would have a different consciousness from us. And the term overview effect came to me on an airplane flight. But there weren't any future space dwellers. There were only astronauts who were close to that. So I started interviewing them. And I wanted to show you Tracy Caldwell Dyson, who's still an active astronaut. I interviewed her in 2019 at Johnson Space Center. This was after the book had been written and published. We did have some language for the experience. And at the very beginning, you hear me saying, Rick, you'll want to listen. Did it give you a sense of purpose? NASA kind of kept me out of all these interviews purposely, and they were right, because it's the astronauts who you should hear. But in this particular section, you can hear a little dialogue. And so let's go ahead, Leah, and have her answer a sense of purpose.
Did it give you a sense of purpose? Not just for you, but for us humans?
Maybe it's semantics, but rather than a purpose, we had a responsibility.
Okay.
And one of the great responsibilities I think we have is to protect it. Like I said, we've got
little
this
baby.
little baby
Yeah.
that's trusting us. with everything. And it's, this, you can really stretch that metaphor that this baby is so full of potential. This baby is going to grow.
Yeah.
And it's going to take care of us someday. We've got to do everything we can to make sure that it has what it needs to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at the Earth from that vantage point, I know others have said this, you don't see the borders. You don't see political borders. You hardly see geographical borders. You just have this sense of, I don't want this to go away, and I don't want to be the only one to see this. Because as I said, I grieved over how I was going to tell people about this, to bring home what I was feeling. In fact, I think my first experience looking at all of that was, again, on the shuttle flight. And I remember at one point, my vision became blurry, and I panicked a little bit. Like, what's going on? I want to see that it's going to go away. And, rubbed my eyes, and I discovered I was actually tearing up. And in microgravity, right, the way fluid behaves, it just balls up on your eyes. Yeah. That was the emotional response I was having unknowingly. I just was, feeling something as I was staring at this view of the whole thing. And it moved me to tears unknowingly.
Couple of things about that. I've watched this clip many times, a couple of things about it. We talk about the overview effect as a cognitive shift, but it's also emotional. And I've had more than one astronaut tell me they cried when they looked at the Earth, when they looked at the mother world. And, you know, many times it's when they first really see the Earth from a distance. They don't know why they cried, but they did. And it's really interesting because we think astronauts don't cry, but they do. Okay, and then I think it was Robert who mentioned that I always say we are in space. We've always been in space. We'll always be in space. And that's why I really support the idea of EarthSpace Day, because the distinction we have between the two is not accurate. We're going to keep using it. I know that. But we always should keep in mind that there is no real distinction. The Earth is in space. And Sarah Sabri, who flew on Blue Origin under the auspices of Space for Humanity, of which I am a member of the advisory council, and they're doing terrific work. I asked Sarah Sabri after her return, I had interviewed her beforehand too, and I asked her what was different before and after. Can you summarize it? So let's show that.
Is there any way to summarize briefly what you think changed?
Yeah, I think so. I think one of the biggest things for me was the lack of separation between Earth and space. And because we've always used the terms space and Earth kind of separate from one another. And we always thought, okay, we're doing things on Earth here, and then like there are certain things that are going to be done for space. But for me, when I was up there, I realized that there's no actual separation between the two. The Earth is just a continuation of it, and we're just a part of this much bigger thing. And that, to me, when that clicked, it just like was, oh, like it makes sense why we're doing what we're doing. It makes sense for us to need to explore it. It makes sense for us to need to understand more of it, because it is us. We are it. And that was the biggest thing for me. And I think I was more on the side of looking towards the outside. Like I felt this connection between Earth and space more than anything. It just felt so part of one another that it was so hard. It's so hard for me to separate the two now. It's just, I think that was the most overwhelming feeling that I felt from this whole experience.
It's really kind of amazing that you have Tracy Caldwell Dyson, a professional astronaut who flew on the shuttle, went to the ISS. She actually came back recently from the ISS. And, she's had hours off world, as we say. And then Sarah Sabri took a very, very brief 11-minute flight And look at the insights they both had. It's amazing. The overview effect is pretty powerful in small doses. Maybe we should talk about micro doses and maximum doses of the overview effect because it's really true. Uh, anyway, I think Sarah also reflected some of what Rick had to say there, and also something of what our friend, the herder of cats, had to say. Robert. Next slide. So, the inaugural Earth Space Day was 2024. I think we got to keep pushing this idea. Yeah, Space Day is great. I mean, Earth Day is great, but Earth Space Day is more meaningful in a way. And we want people to say, well, why are you changing it? We really want to have a debate. It's a good way to start talking about how these two domains interact. Next slide. So I had the privilege of being alive in 1968, and for whatever reason, I have the privilege of being alive today. Rick, I guess I have a purpose. Anyway, 2026, the best of times and the worst of times all over again, or as Yogi Berra would say, deja vu all over again. We have people marching in the streets. We are in a war. The whole world is connected to the war. Honestly, I think the war shows that the overview effect is just as real as the image of the Earth does, because it shows you can't have a war and contain it. The whole world is involved. We're all connected. But once again, we have people being hopeless, helpless. What can we do? Good old NASA comes through again. Hey, let's go to the moon again. And so we have Artemis 2. And as I said, it's almost mystical. It's like somebody's writing a script here, like, hey, these earthlings need a little hope. They need they need to believe. They need to dream, as Rick would say. So we got it. Central Casting sent us 4 astronauts to do exactly what we needed. Let's look at the next slide. So, Reed Wiseman. I had the privilege of interviewing him at Johnson Space Center the same week I interviewed Tracy Caldwell Dyson. I wanted to show you this because I know you got to see Reed and you got to know him pretty well on Artemis 2, but I got kind of a concentrated hour of Reed Wiseman in 2019 and his experience of the orbital overview effect. I can't wait to talk to him now about the lunar overview effect. But let's go ahead and play this. It's really interesting, I think.
Okay, give me just a minute. I'm going to stop sharing this deck and share the full screen YouTube video so we can skip
Sure.
the pesky vibe killing ad. So give me just a second here.
Thanks, Leah. Yeah, we don't need ads. We need the overview effect.
I had looked at pictures on social media and pictures in NASA archives of the Earth so many times, I actually started to get worried. What if I get up there and it's just like the pictures? I mean, that's going to be weird if that's the thing where I'm like, it looks just like the pictures. I'm ready to go home now. And then on the Soyuz, my launch vehicle, I launched with the Russians. And on my Soyuz, when I first got a chance to look out my little window, which is about right here at the Earth, there's something about looking out a round window at the curvature of the Earth that makes it just more pronounced and really makes it have a huge impact. I just had this feeling like I was way up high looking down, and we were over the ocean, and the blues that I saw, it was ridiculous. I'd never imagined in my entire life getting to see something that beautiful. It was so foreign for the human mind to look at that, to see that total black of space, to see the Earth highlighted that way. And then I got to see a sunset. I had one piece of paper, it had a picture of my kids on it and a few of my flight data file burn times on it. But I just took a pencil and I drew like 15 curved lines, and I just wrote light blue, darker blue, pink, purple, dark purple, all the way down to the surface of the Earth at sunset, because the scale of looking at a sun refracting through the atmosphere, it blew me away, and no picture captures that. There's no high enough dynamic range of a photo to capture what the human can see. So that first look outside completely sidelined me. I had a GoPro, and I made a recording to my brother of, no matter how much it costs in the future, come do this. You have to come do this. I mean, it's amazing. Over my 6 months in space, getting to look at the Earth every single day, it shows you something different. Every day it shows you that it's alive. It's a being just like we are. We're guests on this planet. And it's our mother, it's our father, it's our starship cruising around the sun in the middle of the solar system. There was never a moment that I looked out the window and didn't immediately grab a camera to take a picture of something that our planet was doing. It always surprised you. It's always magnificent. I'm a pilot, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a poet, but certainly when you're in low Earth orbit, looking down at the Earth, it doesn't matter if you're a physicist, a school teacher, a stay-at-home parent, or maybe you just backpack for your whole life. If you look out, you're gonna have a magical experience in your own way, for certain.
Doesn't matter who you are. The experience of the overview effect is a universal one. Transcends country, creed. Rick said, I don't care who you are. Don't care what your gender is. And I think Reed just said the same thing. Overview effect doesn't care either. It's going to transform you. So if we could go back to the slide deck and go to the next slide. I think one of the reasons that Artemis 2 captivated people was the 4 astronauts. They were likable. They were relatable. While people on Earth were talking about bombing civilizations out of existence, talking about war and conflict, they were talking about love. They showed that they cared for each other. And one of the most emotional moments for me was when they said, we want to name one of those craters Carol, for Reed Wiseman's late wife. As many of you know, I lost my dear wife, Donna, in 2022. I cried right then and there, as did the astronauts. And who hasn't lost someone? And there it was. We could relate to those astronauts. I can't imagine NASA putting out a video like this one in 1968. Let's watch it. It's really kind of unique. It's called Moonjoy.
It's just everything from the training, but in 3D and absolutely unbelievable. This is incredible.
Copy Moonjoy.
I definitely see all of the basin of Oriental, Copernicus, easily all in view. This is so awesome.
We look like we're smiling at you, like a little Cheshire cat.
Thank you guys.
I thought we just caught an ActiWatch sync. If I had my own, I'd sync it with you. Breaking news. At this time, you are go for all types of uses of the toilet.
And the crew rejoices. Thank you. Yeah, we caught a view of Earth in window 1, and now we're completely distracted for a little bit.
To me, is a great, example of why we go and do these missions. If you can't take love to the stars, then what are we doing? Like, why would we even go?
Couldn't say it any better. They had fun. They were human. Rusty Schweikert said when he was out there, he felt like the sensing element of humanity. They were humanity. We went to the moon. We went to the moon. And we had fun. Space is not all serious, although it is serious, but it's also joyful. And that's okay. Next slide. Okay. I don't normally do this. I'm really honored to have opportunities to speak, and usually I do my own speaking. But when I went to Yuri's night in LA, Ron Guerin spoke, and I'm going to close with what he had to say because it mirrors my thinking, but it was said so beautifully. Ron and I have known each other for many years. We've worked together. He's been a fighter pilot. He's been an astronaut. He's a humanitarian. Recently, a new thing was announced called Astronauts for America. If that's not bringing the overview effect down to Earth, I don't know what is, but I'm pretty sure Ron is involved in that. He gave a brilliant talk, but I'm just going to show you two screen grabs here that really stuck with me. What he talked about, and I'm not sure I have the right wording that he used, but he talked about an unreal world and a real world. I call it surface thinking and overview thinking. And he pointed out the map on the left is how we think on the surface. Lines and borders, and the countries have colors. And guess what? It's flat. Maybe the Earth is flat. Anyway, that's the worldview that is driving behavior on this planet, because that's how most people see it. They have not experienced the overview effect. And Ron pointed out on the right is a picture taken from Apollo 8. And what he said is that's the real world. And the way I put it is the overview effect tells us the truth of who we are and where we are in the universe. That picture on the left is a lie. That's something Ron says too. The picture on the right is the truth. What are we going to choose? We're at an inflection point where we are choosing the future, and it's going to have reverberations through the universe. Next slide. So I'm going to go here with the last minute or so of Ron's talk, because I couldn't say it better and he lived it. So, Leah, if we can go to that key moment where Ron closes his talk.
Sure thing. I've got it queued up. Let me just switch the share.
Thanks to Leah for managing my slides, which are not simple.
Managing everything magically.
Yeah.
So I will close it with this. I talked about how everything is about perspective, right? And we live in a society right now where a difference of perspective or opinion is seen as something to defend against, right? But our differences of perspective are our strengths. Whenever we see things with more than one perspective, we see it in stereoscopic vision. We start to see the depth of the problem. And so whenever we face a challenge, whenever we face a problem, the more perspectives we can apply to that, the better will be our solutions, the more long-lasting will be solutions, the better will be our understanding of the problem. So we often hear that diversity is strength. One of the reasons why diversity is strength is because it leads to diversity of perspective. And so to illustrate this a little bit, I want to tell you the story of my...
I think that was where you wanted me to end it there, Frank. So I think we're good to go.
No, could you go farther?
Sure.
Return to Earth, but I'm going to have to skip through a bunch of slides first. Hold on. Okay. So when my 6-month mission was over, my 2 Russian crewmates and I climbed into our Soyuz spacecraft. We undocked from the space station. We did a couple of laps around the planet. And as we crossed the south tip of South America, we turned the spacecraft around. We fired the engines. We entered the upper atmosphere. It was very similar to what we saw in Artemis 2 yesterday. We had this fiery, violent ride through the atmosphere at 5 miles a second. The parachutes opened. It threw us all over the place. We didn't splash down in the soft Pacific Ocean. We smashed down into Kazakhstan. And I have to point out that video is in slow motion. So we actually hit a lot harder than it looks. We hit so hard, in fact, that we bounced and we rolled and we flipped over. Wow. And when the capsule finally came to rest, my window was pointed down at the ground. And out of my window, I saw a rock, a flower, and a blade of grass. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm home. And what was really cool about that thought is I was home, but I was in Kazakhstan.
Next slide.
At that moment, home wasn't.
Next slide.
One moment, please.
We're so.
All right. I think we got one more video. Or I think that's
one more
it.
Slide.
One more slide. There we go. Hold on just 1 second. There we go.
Just closing on EarthSat video, the picture that was brought back by Artemis 2, a perfect complement to Earthrise from Apollo 8. And just to repeat what Ron said, he was home and he was in Kazakhstan. That's overview thinking. Thank you very much, everybody. It's been great to be here with you today.
Wow, wonderful. Thank you so much, Frank. And it's wonderful to have you here. It's quite appropriate. You talked about your friend being in Kazakhstan, that being home, and how artificial these borders are that we create between our different cultures or civilizations here on Earth unnecessarily, because we're really all sharing this very, very, very small planet together. And one way to be able to do that is to be able to do that is by having sort of rules or arrangements or agreements between our different countries. And that leads us to our next speaker. Just like when we have different technologies and we want to build the spaceship like Artemis that goes up, and Artemis may have hundreds of different components that are in all parts of many different subsystems, made by, in this case of Artemis, made by over 50 states in the United States and many of our international partners and allies, but they all have to come together for one purpose and to operate and function together. And the way they do that is to create interoperability, and the way they do that is by standards so that things plug together. Well, when we're talking about civilizations working together and different countries working together, we call that policy. And policy is really what creates the interoperability between our different countries. And we tend to brush it off as though it's boring or not important, but it's actually quite the opposite. It's empowering, and it creates the collaboration that we need to then work together. And nobody knows that better than our next speaker, who's working very, very actively and heading up a coalition, the largest coalition across our amazing but small planet of countries that are working together, looking at how policy can bring us together by having common understandings of how we live together on Earth, work and live together to explore space, and sustain space to sustain Earth, as Rick explained in our pillars for the Earthlight Foundation. So I would really, with a great pleasure, like to introduce the amazing and brilliant, if I must say, Dr. Gülin Dede, who will talk to us about her amazing work in setting policy at the United Nations and beyond. And maybe she'll also talk about some of her exploration that she's done personally as an analog astronaut as well. So everybody, please welcome the amazing and dear friend, Dede.
Robert, thank you very much for the kind introduction, and thank you everyone for having me. Thanks, Rick, and to all our participants online giving their time and attention to us today. The intro was covering a lot, so I will try to hold up to it. Maybe we first put the slides online, Leah, if I may ask, then I go along with it. I wanted to also use this inspirational Earthrise image from Artemis, and this is really all the more inspiring. And it also, at a personal level, inspired me to do a first ever LinkedIn post. I'm not someone who is so much online and around, but I try to be now, working at the European Space Agency for the past 10 years. I had different perspective and different priorities, but now being in leadership of a nonprofit organization and very much involved in policy making at UN level, it takes a little bit more effort towards being visible and being online, so to say. Well, Earth observation and space governance and planetary stewardship, they go hand in hand. And from orbital infrastructure is where we can start building planetary stewardship. If we could just continue with the next slide. So Earth observation matters, not that I worked for it for the past 10 years, building up satellites, but it's just also the way space serves Earth each day, every day. And it's not just about climate awareness, it's also a lot operational, with disaster response, environmental intelligence, resilience planning, international coordination, just to list a few of the highlights. And Earth observation turns orbital capability into practical public value. Why I'm saying this, with the beautiful Sentinel-2 impression on the right-hand side, making photos of the image in 13 different bands. This is where technology really meets our needs to save this planet Earth that all our lives depend on. And we need to do this. It's not just a good to have, it's a must. Can we go on the next slide? So I just want to say a couple things about upstream and downstream terminologies, just to unpack a little bit here what Earth observation is about. It's often spoken about as downstream domain because many people encounter it through applications and services or derived products. But that framing can be quite misleading in terms of technology, because Earth observation is only possible because of robust upstream investment. In this case, the investment by the ESA member states and also the European Commission, and as well as other partners. For instance, I just would like to give an example. From what I'm actually wearing today is a Sentinel-6 Michael Freilich jacket. So it feels especially fitting to this webinar, because this mission was named after Michael Freilich, who had been the former director of NASA's Earth Science Division. And it reflects exactly the kind of sustained ESA-NASA cooperation also amongst other partners who participated into this mission. And it's about long-term Earth observation commitment. And this is all this conversation is about. So all these satellites that we see on the screen are part of ESA's Earth observation missions, and I have worked for the part related to Copernicus. So the entire spectrum of these satellites is what makes Copernicus. So there's a heavy orbital investment that goes into it, and it's a good moment just to highlight that one. And while the downstream services help us make sense of this data, the data infrastructure is in there. It needs continuous management and being kept operational at all times, and to be sustained with new satellite programs that are up and coming. So with this one, we can go on to the next slide, please. So this is the so-called first generation Sentinels. So you will see also Sentinel 6 there. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5P, 5, and 6, 7 satellites. This constellation is full. It's all in orbit. It's operational. From some of the satellites, we have already launched 3 missions, which enhances the revisit time. For instance, Sentinel-2, as in my first slide, we have 3 of those missions, A, B, and C, in orbit, which really dramatically enhances the revisit time and the data availability. And also the others, some of them we have 2, we have 3 versions of them in orbit. And this is what continuity is about and how it is provided. If we can go on to the next one. So this is the space component evolution. So I will unpack this a bit. When the policy needs also expand, so does the infrastructure. So in principle, we added more to the Sentinel first generation constellation by working into new satellites. And those are the CO2M. Maybe CO2M is one of the most recalled ones, which concerns anthropogenic carbon dioxide monitoring, anthropogenic gas emissions monitoring. So this is going to help us stocktake CO2. That's very important for environment, and this is not just this is only one. So the next generation Sentinels also cover broad spectrum of new applications for environment protection and climate resilience, and many more applications, in addition to the next generation Sentinels, where we help evolve Sentinel-1, 2, and 3 into newer versions. So this is a spectrum of 15 projects, 16 projects altogether combined. We can go on the next one. And from this one, I would like to come to space governance, because space governance is what ties it all. Why I'm saying this? Because we need trusted awareness of what's happening. This is one aspect. And the space-based observations give us that awareness, but awareness alone is not enough. So we need to be able to act on this data. And where we can convert this is forums like United Nations. So this is a photo from the moment at the legal subcommittee in April, where I had the opportunity to join. And this is where space policy is developed. And it's very important that it is deeply connecting and reflecting technical realities and institutional coordination and long-term stewardship. So all of these conversations need to be there on the floor in that room, be discussed, because as I mentioned, awareness alone is not enough, and we need to make it actionable through the right way of governance. Therefore, global space policy must be shaped with serious technical involvement. I'd like to make here a point, because not just politicians need to go there, fill in the rooms. It's also a lot of operational systems with a lot of technical complexity are discussed in those rooms. So technical consultation should not be an afterthought of, well, we had this one, and can you work with it? Technical people who helped build those space infrastructures should be also in those rooms to help the conversation move forward. So I see this very crucial, and I'm happy to contribute to that in my capacity with my foundation. So it's really appreciated there as well when you see it, and also the other way around. As a person with technical foundation, and I have developed over the course of years some understanding of the legal aspects and how we do the business with the European Commission, working directly, and now working with UN. That is also another important lesson for the technical people to understand and learn from, so that we can go hand in hand and act with wisdom. Next slide, please, Leah. So I'd like to also touch base a little bit on the NGO aspects, because it's quite different, and also the agenda of each organization is quite different, but they would like to all, in a way, steer into the same direction. So I have seen from the government policy side back in the day when I used to work in Turkey, and I was also involved in the satellite program boards, where the space relevant activities, where we were there working with. And then moving on to the European Space Agency gave me the overview on industry and really closely collaborating with industry and also with the member states, with the space agencies at an international setting. But now working with an NGO has some differences. So some ideas or some programs that are possible through space agencies are not pursued, of course, in the capacity of an NGO, but the other way around is also correct. Some of the ideas that the NGOs are raising today are not mainstream programs, space programs. For instance, this slide is just speaking about what we are advancing within Space Renaissance International. It has a lot to do with space sustainability and civilian space development as well, which is not necessarily a space agency conversation, but also on the support to cislunar space industrialization. For instance, there we merge. And Space for Peace, I think nobody would say against it, but still at national level, maybe the interests differ. And inclusivity of space activities is nothing to discard, as well as it would be applicable for any other activity on Earth that we would like to be inclusive about. And to some level, maybe we implement, maybe not. So actually, Frank, thank you very much for making the point about the 18th SDG initiative, because I have a slide for that as well. So if Leah would be so kind to move us to the next one, it should be there. Yes. So the disclaimer goes that this is not a concept endorsed by UN or whatsoever. So this is a concept that is advanced with through SRI and together with its 120 signatory organizations of this 18th SDG coalition. So it matters to us because that perspective of critically looking into the 2030 sustainability agenda and post-2030 is not really decided, let me put it this way. So it's a conversation ongoing, and we have some suggestions. So apparently this is also bringing so many others together. Now that we had a side event organized during the legal subcommittee of the UN COPIUS, And that was also a remarkable moment to advance the discussion on this and to see how we can coordinate it in the bigger picture. Because it matters now, human activity is not only on Mother Earth, it's also now in space taking place. And the sustainability, how we have ended up today with the planet under so much pressure, should not be another case for space environment. Also, the other way around, when space is supporting all of these sustainable development goals significantly, then it is also an enabler. So we see it as an enabler, and the picture would be lacking one element without it. So this is why we have this idea, and this is why we are working on it. It's nothing new. It has been there for a while, but this year we just picked it up more strongly. We have a roadmap, we have a framework, and we have some online consultations going on. So please be kindly invited to also provide your comments and contributions to it online on the Space Renaissance International website. And I think that explains it. We could go on to the next one, Leah, please. Well, this is a little bit my reflection. So how do we come from this big picture to responsibility? And seeing everything from this system of systems perspective, and Frank gives us this overview effect. It's such a strong. I'm missing words. Apologies. So it's such a strong feeling to think that way. Maybe I could also relate a little bit here with my analog astronaut mission. I cannot say I had the overview effect. I always call it the big picture, which is one of my rule of thumb. Let me put it, it's my rule of thumb approaching everything. But I had a focus effect. I need to discuss this with you, Frank. Being in a confined space for 8 days, and I was there the crew commander, and I had to face the responsibility of the mission requirements, along with people's psychology, along with also my own experience and how I had to reflect on it at the time. It was not straightforward. So I call it the focus effect. After I was out there and I was returning home, and at the airport in my second flight, I just missed 3 hours. And I don't realize that time has passed that fast or slow in this case. So I was just trying to make a photo with my Instax camera, and the photo is just perfect. It's by alignment, it's by down to centimeter level precision. But apparently I have spent, in the blink of an eye, 3 hours to make it. So interesting results of these kind of experiences can be studied more. But okay, letting this personal thing aside, and coming back to the big picture, planetary awareness must really become planetary stewardship. And if we can marry this transition, make this transition, then we get the perspective through space, and we have Earth observation continuity, and we have the space governance responsibly. Then I think we are going to get where we want and remain there for sustainable and resilient futures. So thank you very much.
Wow, amazing. Thank you so very much. So thank you so much, Doctor, for discussing the observations, your experiences with them. Now we have a few moments left in our webinar today for Earth Day to talk about, now that we have that information, we have we saw the big picture with Frank, we then with Earth observation with Dr. Gülin, we went a little deeper to look at, peel back the layers of the onion, if you will, on the different compositions of the Earth, whether what you're observing, the oceans, the canopies. But now, what do we do with that information? What actions are we going to take? I mean, our policy and our observations are only as good as they are implementable in actions that have impact. So with that, I'd like to introduce our very last speaker, and then we're going to have some closing remarks by Rick. Well, just for quickly, briefly, we have an amazing technologist who's going to talk about a big, bold idea, and everything we do to be able to save our big, bold planet needs to be a big, bold concept and solution. So we appreciate the fact that our next speaker and his organization are thinking big, but we only have a few moments to be able to do that. If you could please, everybody, welcome the brilliant and amazing Jeff from Earthshade to be able to talk about how we're going to take all of this information, all of these concepts, all this policy, and put it into action.
So, Robert, before we get started, I do just want to clarify, we are scheduled to go till 2, not till 1:30, so Jeff does not have to rush through unless he has to jump off. So please let me know if that's the case, Jeff. I don't want to leave you hanging, but we are going until 2 p.m. Eastern.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. I'm on the West Coast. Excuse me, so it's still morning over here. So I got the message, hurry, and then we don't actually need to hurry, right?
No, absolutely. Take your time.
Okay. I would like to invite as many questions while we're going as possible. I have quite a few slides. I am going to go through some of them pretty quickly, and there's going to be a lot of question time at the end. However, I prefer questions throughout, if that's possible. I realize that's a little bit different than a regular webinar. So please ask your questions as we go along. It also helps me gauge what to talk about next. So I really appreciate the questions. So hi, everybody. I'm Jeff Overbeek. I'm with the Planetary Sunshade Institute. We've actually just recently changed our name. It was the Planetary Sunshade Foundation. It is great to be on this webinar today with you all. Some really great talks before this. It's amazing. Thank you. So my talk is quite a bit more technical. I'm an engineer by background. You see me in the lower right there. I was at SpaceX for 12 years. That's the Falcon 1 rocket there behind me, which I helped put into space. And then there's the Falcon 9 rocket back there as well. So I was the co-founder of EthosSpace, a lunar mining startup company for the last 3 years, and I am the technical director for Planetary Sunshade Institute now, where we're working on cooling Earth from space. So Ross Centers started this back in 2019, and Morgan Goodwin has been running it for the last couple of years as well. So I think some of you may have met those folks. So a planetary sunshade, what is it? The Earth is warming. We're about 1.5 degrees Celsius warmer than pre-industrial, and the impacts from that are known as climate change impacts. And so a planetary sunshade is a solar sail constellation in space between the sun and the Earth that could cool down Earth by about 1 degree Celsius. It could do more, it could do less. It's how much surface area essentially there is between the sun and the Earth, how much shade, how much sunlight we're reflecting away from the Earth that is headed towards the Earth from the sun. So if we can reflect about 1% of that sunlight back out to space, then Earth will cool down by 1 degree Celsius. That's the basic idea of a sunshade. The sunshade is really large, okay? And so in order to get that much mass out of the Earth's gravity well would require thousands, many thousands of very large rockets. And so the architecture for a planetary sunshade that we're looking at is largely lunar-based mass, right? Almost the 99.9, I think it's 99.97% of the mass from this architecture can come from the moon. So in the background here, we see a couple of what the solar sails actually look like. So let's talk about the problem statement a little bit. Climate change. The red line at the top here is the trajectory that we're on with climate right now, right? We are here in the lower left where it says today, and this is the only chart that I show that is missing the units for it. Generically, time is to the right, and the climate impacts are the vertical scale here, right? So there is a point in the future, a theoretical point, where it becomes politically intolerable, where climate change becomes politically intolerable, right? That point, almost everything that we as in humanity is working on for climate change is going into this reducing emissions, right? We are putting 50 gigatons of CO2 into the atmosphere every year. The net zero corresponds to essentially this carbon flattening out here, okay, and temperature stabilizing. However, once we stop putting emissions into the atmosphere, the temperature is still going to climb for a while. Okay? So there is almost, let's see, the decarbonization of the atmosphere is going to eventually get us from the red line down to this orange line here, okay? That is going to require an enormous amount of surplus green energy beyond the energy. Well, this is the energy transition. Beyond that energy transition, to get even more CO2 out of the atmosphere using technological means, is going to require as much energy as the energy transition was, that much more surplus green energy. So the time scale that we're looking at here is at least 100 years, possibly as long as 200 years before Earth's temperature is back down to either pre-industrial or at a managed temperature level, right? So the Earth's temperature is essentially these three terms here. There's the emissions that we're putting out there currently. There's the future emissions that we can pull back out of the atmosphere, and there's reflecting sunlight in the meantime. So there's two ways that we can reflect sunlight. There's stratospheric aerosol injections, and that's fairly cheap. However, it is a little dirtier than the sunshades. But it is cheaper, and it is something that we can do sooner. So stratospheric aerosol injection is something that can reflect sunlight with some sulfur in the stratosphere. And that is something that we can do for a while we build something like a planetary sunshade. Okay? Planetary sunshade is something that can then take over that in the future. We can begin to wind down the stratospheric aerosols and deploy solar sails out in space. Okay? I'm going to talk through this real quick. The Earth's albedo is such that we are already reflecting out about 1/3 of the sunlight that reaches Earth is already reflected back out to space. It reflects off of the snow. It reflects off of the glaciers, ice, etc. That albedo has changed since the 90s, and Earth was reflecting about 30.5%. It's now reflecting 30%. And so the Earth is storing more of the heat, both from the albedo as well as from the CO2. So here are a couple of the methods that are out there for reflecting sunlight. I mentioned that reflecting it as close to the sun as possible. That's the space-based sunshades. We can also reflect it from stratospheric aerosols. That's sulfur in the stratosphere. There are a couple of other techniques as well. However, the SAI and the sunshades are the only two techniques for reflecting sunlight that are global in nature. These other methods are much more regional and therefore a smaller effect. Reflecting sunlight, while that would cool the Earth, it also has the effect of separating the average global temperature from CO2. And so I want to point out here, it's important that we recognize that reflecting sunlight is not the answer to climate change. It's a temporary solution that helps with some of the climate impacts. However, there's still other impacts that are significant, such as ocean acidification, which something like a sunshade is not helping with. So how do we reflect sunlight? What does this really look like? This perfectly to scale image here of the solar system shows that we've got a sun over here, we've got an Earth over here. The sunshade constellation is in between the sun and the Earth. It's reflecting some of that light away. What that looks like in solar system terms is there is a point in space called the Sun-Earth Lagrange point 1. There are quite a few other Lagrange points, but Lagrange point 1, by physics definition, is the point between the sun and the Earth at all times. So as the Earth is orbiting the sun, Lagrange point 1 is always where if you put something there, its shadow will be cast on the Earth, right? So some of that energy then is being either absorbed or reflected by that device rather than being absorbed by the Earth. Okay, so there's the equation for that body at that point in space is in equilibrium. Okay, whatever you put there will stay there. So what we are talking about putting there is a heliogyro spacecraft. Now, the heliogyro has been around since the 60s. It was originally developed by JPL. It was going to go to Halley's Comet. The heliogyro is, as shown here, it's essentially a craft in the middle. It's spinning, and these blades are able to reflect some sunlight. They're solar sails. The heliogyro was originally intended to be a very light spacecraft. We actually need the mass in order to keep it at the SEL1 point. And so our heliogyro looks a little bit different. But the main point here is that the spacecraft concept has been around for quite a while already. There has been a couple of different designs. The most recent design of this is Helios. That is a spacecraft that is the design for it has come quite a ways. However, a heliogyro spacecraft has not yet shown. So we are working on a demo mission for a heliogyro to show that this kind of craft could work, this kind of solar sail can work. So here's some design images that from the Helios spacecraft. This is again before sunshades. So the one that we are working on is taking that concept of a spacecraft and making it really, really large. So this heliogyro spacecraft right here is 40 kilometers in diameter. Okay, one of these pedals, one of these blades here, is 10 kilometers long by 120 meters wide. And then the cables themselves are 10 meters or 10 kilometers long as well. They all go into a central hub, and the whole thing spins at about 4 rotations per hour. because it's spinning, all those aluminum foil, essentially these are aluminum foil. They're just as thin as the aluminum foil in your kitchen. And these aluminum foil sheets are essentially in tension, and they're reflecting the sunlight away from the Earth. So 5,000 of these is enough to cool the Earth down by 1 degree Celsius. It's very large. That's 60 megatons of metal mined from the moon. So we are in the process of publishing an Acta Astronautica publication. We have a special edition that's going to come out later this year. And there are a couple of different architectures. I'm showing one of the architectures here. We're going to we're publishing the engineering for the solar sail as well as the climate results. So what are we really, let's talk about some analogies here and put this in comparison, right? At SEL1, 5 times farther than the moon, we're talking about putting 60 megatons of aluminum out there to actually cool the Earth. That's a mega project. We as in humanity are able to accomplish mega projects. For example, we have the Three Gorges Dam here. The Three Gorges Dam happens to be about the same amount of mass that it takes to actually build this this dam. It is about the same amount of mass that we actually need out here at SEL1 prime. So you start to get a sense of the scale of this, right? Out at SEL2 on the other side of the Earth, we have the James Webb Space Telescope, right? So we are able to create amazing mega projects, both in space and at the size that we need. And now we need to combine them and do them at SEL1. So I mentioned that the heliogyro has been around since the 60s. The planetary sunshade concept has also been around for about 40 years. And 40 years ago, it was not feasible yet for a number of reasons, but one of those is simply the cost of mass to orbit. 40 years ago, it was really expensive. This is a logarithmic scale here. So the cost of mass to space has gone down significantly. It's on its way down still. Also, the mass to orbit per year continues to go way up. So we are at a time right now where space is industrializing, right? It is more than only human travel. If I can, if it's even possible to put those words together, more than only human space travel, we are beginning to put enormous amounts of mass into orbit. So we're at the beginning of industrializing space, and it's a pretty exciting time. It also then makes something like a sunshade start to become feasible. So the heliogyro, one of the main why it looks so strange, and we might be expecting something like the static disk, and it was certainly when we were getting into, okay, a sunshade has existed for 40 years as a theoretical aluminum sheet in the sky. How do we turn it into an actual machine that we can engineer and start to build? On the left here, we see some of the first kinds of concepts that we were coming up with. However, there's structurally something like a cantilever that would let us build something 40 kilometers in diameter like this, scales as a function of the radius cubed, right? And with a tension spacecraft like this, that factor goes away. And so structurally, a heliogyro clearly wins any other kind of structure. just lost the slideshow. At the center of the HelioGyro spacecraft is a central hub like this. The idea is that we would stack up a bunch of these hubs inside of, for example, a Starship rocket. The hub would have all the avionics on it and everything that would make it a complete spacecraft other than just the aluminum sheets themselves and the cables. All of that comes from the moon, but these hubs are essentially the smart hubs that would launch from the moon or from Earth. So in total, in order to build a planetary sunshade, then not including the lunar industry that it would take to get the actual aluminum out to space, but just to get the mass for the sunshades out to the right location in space only takes about 220 Starship launches. Okay. That's for about 5,000 of these HelioGyros. I'm going to skip some of the lunar resources and some of the other technical engineering material. I want to talk a little bit about, all right, we see the Earth here on the right side. The Lagrange point is so far away from the Earth that this image here represents 5 representative solar sails, and you see that the shade cone from any one of these reaches the Earth. So what you put out there is not casting an umbra shade across the Earth as it flies by. It's just always a small amount of shade, similar to a fleck of pepper on a light bulb a long ways away. So that uniform shading, however, because of the nuances of Earth and where Earth is storing its heat, essentially, results in if you were to cool the Earth down uniformly, then some parts of the Earth, for example, up here by Greenland, are less cooled than the southern hemisphere here. So uniform shading is not necessarily the ideal climate management. And so we're also looking into, if we were to do polar preferential, can we follow the seasons and cool the North and South Pole down on the Earth a little bit more? Right. So we're looking into this. We're currently running some climate model simulation runs with NCAR. ARIA, the UK's version of DARPA. ARIA has generously given us a grant that is letting us look into some various climate scenarios and perform some of these engineering architectures to see what can we really do to help the climate from space. So if we move some of the solar sails to the north and to the south, like we're showing here, then we can get something that is a little bit better for the climate. And within a couple of weeks, I hope to completely replace this slide with actual NCAR results, which would show then how much cooling how close to pre-industrial can we get, if that is the goal, right? We're starting to look into the climate results here and we're just weeks away from it. So it's going to look something like this. So we have something of a choice here when it comes to climate, right? Are we going to allow the kind of civilizational chaos and possibly even loss of access to space? Or are we going to unite and get around something like a sunshade vision? I realize that is quite a claim, and I'm happy to take questions about that as well later on. I'm going to bring it back to the problem statement here. We mentioned the temperature. I'm going to put this now in perspective. These are 2024 numbers. 2 trillion has been spent on reducing emissions. 1.25 billion on removing those emissions from the atmosphere. 65 billion has been on directly preventing climate impacts, and almost $500 million on reacting to them. Only $30 million has gone into so far reflecting sunlight. A tiny fraction of the overall effort. And that 30 million is global for 2014. So I've talked a little bit about the engineering that we're doing here. I've promised some climate science results. The Acta Astronautica journal that will come out later this year. And however, where it's really at, the hard work that we have ahead of us is in the social science. It's in the governance, right? So it's great to have some of these other talks cover that as well. With the hard work ahead with climate, and in particular climate engineering, is really in the social science. It's in that governance section, and it's in the political will of people wanting something like a sunshade early enough to put some money into it early enough so that some of us can do some engineering this early on and get a better sense of what would happen to the earth if we do something like a sunshade, if we build a sunshade. So, any questions? I hope that there are some questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much for those really thought-provoking and big ideas, which is exactly what we need. I'm happy to hear that you're only going to need a couple of hundred Starship launches. That should not even take a year. They're in the process of building right from where I'm sitting here. I can look up and we talked about the amazing times we live in. And not only did we go around and circle back to the moon, soon to be stepping foot back there to stay, but also having 3 Starship launches here on a regular basis, daily basis. So I would love to have some questions. Maybe we could start, first of all, with just a question or two from our other panelists. Dr. Dede, maybe a question for Jeff.
Jeff, that is a very ambitious take on. I congratulate you for putting some thought and effort into getting this together, even the concept of it and all the calculations that went into it and the work so far. My question would be on the cost, which is the part maybe I missed. 30 million is the investment that has gone to it so far, or how much more is needed? I understand and appreciate that it will be a fraction of what it costs us on a daily basis to help mitigate climate change. Can you give some details on that?
Sure. Yep. So these numbers are so large that it's always important to put it in context, right? We're talking about a 100 or 200 year timescale on this chart. The specific numbers on the slide here are the 2024 numbers. So just in 2024, the $2 trillion was put into reducing emissions globally. The cost of a sunshade, the simplest answer is that it would cost about $1 trillion to build a sunshade for the planet. If you just look at the industrialization required to build a sunshade as being for the sunshade. Okay. In other words, if we decide to build the sunshade using lunar resources, go to the moon, set up the lunar industry that is required for that, etc., we're looking at about $1 trillion. And the timeline for that, if we were to get, I coming from SpaceX, I speak in pretty aggressive, optimistic aerospace schedules. Okay? It would take about 10 years to, if we decided to go Manhattan Project, essentially on building something like a sunshade, okay, then in 10 years we could start to put the first actual sunshades into location out at SEL1 from lunar resources, right? We could put some up earlier from Earth, but to get the sunshade system, the 5,000 start building, we could do that in about 10 years, and then it would take about 10 years to get to the 1 degree Celsius reduction. So in 20 years for $1 trillion, we can build a sunshade. $1 trillion is also the cost of stratospheric aerosol injection, the net present value. If you were to continue that out for 100 or 200 years, the cost of that also ends up being about $1 trillion. And compared to the cost of unmitigated climate change during that time frame, $1 trillion is, trivial.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jeff. Thank you so much, Doctor, for your great question. Thank you so much to all of the panelists for sort of putting together the pieces of this puzzle, and in this short time that we spent together, giving us a little bit of the microcosm of the way we have to work together and collaborate to solve these big problems that we have, most poignantly here on Earth Day, to be able to protect our planet, our wonderful spaceship Earth, by taking all of the great minds, different ways of thinking, as we talked about the diversity and the strength of the diversity of our backgrounds, but coming together with this common mission to be able to work together for the benefit of Earth. Just like Rick established for us in the principles of the Earthlight Foundation. So with that, thank you so much to all of you. I would like to now bring it back to Rick. So we'll, just as the Earth turns, we'll make a full circle back and remind us what brought us together and to give us some parting words. Rick?
Thanks, Robert. I'm going to actually not spend too much time on myself here. We've only got about 5 minutes left. What I would like to do, if you don't mind, is do a concrete action that we can take right now. And that is to engage in supporting the project of sending my friend Frank White into space. I think Frank has a short video. Hopefully it's under 5 minutes, Frank, because we only have 5 and people are going to have to bail.
It is.
Okay, let's move fast, Robert. Let's support this project right now, because
absolutely. And by the way, this is a round trip ticket, just to clarify. We do want to have Frank back.
Oh, Robert, thank you so much for clarifying that. I think that was a point of speculation.
So when I do my ticket drive, I know a lot of people are going to be pushing for the one way, but for Frank, we want him back.
Correct.
So let's go into it right now.
Expanse fans, space and science enthusiasts, I'm here in Cusco, Peru, exploring fascinating Inca astronomy centers, most notably Machu Picchu, and bringing a special message to send our dear friend Frank White, who coined the term the overview effect, to space. First, the Artemis mission illustrated the difference between surface thinking and overview thinking. Seen from the surface of the Earth, we perceive difference, division, conflict. But from above the surface, we perceive unity, oneness, interconnection, and cooperation. This is an inflection point where humanity has a choice between the two. On one level, his flight is about realizing a lifelong personal goal, The message is about holding on tight to your dreams and never giving up. But at another level, it's about maintaining the momentum of the Artemis effect and bringing overview thinking to a global audience. The message is that we have a choice, and our decision will influence life on Earth and off-world for millennia. We're inviting people to go beyond making a contribution and join the mission. It won't just be a flight, but also support for bringing the overview effect down to Earth. So join us in sending Frank to space.
Whoa, fantastic. Frank, you want to give us a couple of last words, and Robert, and then we can take it out.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'd just like to say, first of all, that was Nadine Nicole, who was a star in The Expanse, which ironically is a TV series about what we don't want to happen, as she herself would say. It's not a Star Trek future, it's an anti-Star Trek future. And I asked her if she would do a video for my campaign, and she said, yeah, send me some talking points. And that's what she did. And I'm very, very grateful to her. So I just want to summarize by saying, yes, absolutely. The overview effect is not just a nice 3-word concept. It's a whole way of viewing our planet, our mother world, and the future. And it lays out the choice before us, which Rick talked about at the very beginning. So we have come full circle. We've come back to the Earth from the moon. And thank you, Rick, for your championship of the right choice being made. And thank you to Earthlight for sponsoring EarthSpace.
Thank you. And thank you very much to all of you again for your contributions, for the audience, for coming and engaging with the Earthlight community. We encourage this to be the beginning and not the end. That this is a inflection point, a pivot point for your engagement, not just on Earth Day, but every day. And with that, I would like to thank the person who really made all this happen and makes everything happen in Earthlight, the amazing Leah. Thank you so much for all that you do for us and the community and for the planet. Take it away, Leah.
Thank you so much, Robert. Thank you so much to our panelists and to Reverend Rick, our fearless leader. This is going to be recorded, so this is going to be available on YouTube if you'd like to share this with anyone who wasn't able to attend today. And if you want to look up any of our great speakers, they're all on LinkedIn. And we'll be doing a follow-up emails on how you can get involved in the projects that they're working on. So look for those in your inboxes. And top of the hour, there we are. Everyone have a great evening, afternoon, or morning, depending on where you are.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody.
Happy Earth Space Day.
Happy
Earth Day.
Earth Space Day.
Space Day. Bye.